Welcome to Statistically Speaking, a CK Pharma Solutions podcast where Kay
and Caroline.
In each episode, we bring you conversations with industry leaders from pharma, biotech, and CROs.
Together, we explore market insights, career advice, and the latest trends shaping the life sciences industry. Get ready for discussions that inspire, inform, and help you navigate the ever-evolving world of life sciences. This is Statistically Speaking, navigating the world of life sciences. On today's episode of Statistically Speaking, a CK Pharma Solutions podcast, we're joined by Hank Dennis, Senior Manager of Clinical Data Coding at Pfizer. With over 20 years of experience across CROs and pharma, Hank brings a wealth of knowledge in clinical data coding. It's a great discussion, and we're glad to have him on the show.
Hi, Hank. Thanks for joining us today on Statistically Speaking. You have a very interesting background, so I'd love for you to talk to us about your journey moving around biometrics.
Okay, yeah, and thank you once again for having me here. I started in a sponsor, I started working at a large sponsor as a SAS programmer way back when version 6 was around. So those who know SAS, that was many moons ago. And we were working in a software called ClinTrial. So we were actually using SAS to build data capture screens. I'm like, that's the beginning piece of data management. So I got my feet wet in the data management and then moved over into data management at that large sponsor. And it was good. I was on a few different therapeutic areas and then realized, I want a little bit of a change. I want to go to the CRO side and see how it looks. So I joined the CRO, and definitely a different experience, which I'm sure we'll touch on the uniqueness of each experience later, but the opportunity definitely to learn a little more with a bunch of different sponsors, a bunch of different systems. And then after spending over a decade in two different CROs, then I decided I wanted to come back to the sponsor end. So a little ping-ponging back and forth between sponsor to CRO, back to sponsor. But you know what? You learn a lot in that journey in the two different arenas.
Just to dig in actually into your career development. So from my understanding, at the moment, Pfizer has a unique structure for both a management and a technical track. Can you walk me through your experience with that career development and not always being so linear and kind of stepping down from a managerial position at Pfizer and the options that were given to you from like, hey, you can actually step down and kind of move into more of a technical position?
Sure. Yeah. So many organizations, I'm sure, have a similar structure where you have an opportunity for career advancement in what are called two different tracks, job tracks. There's the management track and then the technical non-management track.
Yeah.
And usually the difference is that you're having direct reports reporting up into you. So, when I got over to Seagen, formerly Seattle Genetics, they hired me as a coder, and then I decided, and that was coming from the CRO where I managed a team of 18 coders. So I stepped down from the CRO side to a senior coder role when they hired me at Seagen, and was perfectly fine with it. And then they said, we're getting busier. We need to build out the team. How'd you like to manage again? Like, okay. And then, of course, I had to go through candidates and the wonderful hiring process with awesome recruiting teams.
Yeah.
And hired out my team and did the management there. And then Pfizer acquired us. And there was already a coding team in place. So we're basically merging my team in with the Pfizer team because of the structure where I only have one direct report. Some organizations say you have to have X number of direct reports to be considered a manager. I don't understand how that is, but that is a requirement in some organizations. Because I only have the one direct report, I was discussed of transitioning that direct report. So now my direct report and I report to the same manager, which is a little unique.
Yeah.
But that my manager at Pfizer does not see into our Seagen portfolio. So I'm still having the one-on-ones like I always did. But as we are building out the business and building up our teams and working on true integration, career advancement was discussed, as it always is every year. Hey, what do you want to do for goals this year? What are your mid and long-term goals for your career? And I said, man, I've been there. I've done that with management. I liked the people. I love my team. I still love my team, but I want to get out of management.
Yeah.
I'm technically driven. I love to be in the trenches. So that, and my boss said, okay, that wasn't where I initially thought you'd be going. We thought you'd be going up the management track to like associate director, but hey, whatever makes you happy in your career. So, I've been very fortunate that I have a manager that understands that desire and supports me 100% and said, absolutely. We'll worry about the reorg as it relates to management oversight when we need to. You focus on being the best technical person you can be. And, in our company at Pfizer, you can still keep the title. So yes, I have the senior manager title. I can actually go all the way up to associate director if I wanted to and not have a single direct report, which blows my mind because I've never heard of that in any company. But, what happens is as you move your way up that manager ranks, if you know anything about the associate directors and above, there's more organizational and initiatives that you have to deal with. So I'll be responsible. I'll still be in the trenches in maintaining technical expertise and technical excellence, but I will also then be responsible for leading initiatives.
That's amazing. I mean, I think it's awesome that Pfizer is doing this, really creating an opportunity for both people that want to seek out, there's a lot of people that do want to be managers, but there's also people on the upside, just like yourself, who has been there, done that, has really strong technical abilities. And I think it's a win-win for both candidates and these organizations to really let them thrive in either or position. So I'm curious to see if hopefully other companies roll this out, because I know a lot of candidates would definitely be interested in joining an organization like that.
I agree. I think, the fact that you felt so comfortable with going to your manager and saying, hey, this is not for me. This is not something I think I'm going to be, comfortable doing in the next year. And, he listened and he took that into consideration and did what was right for you and matches what you're looking for. I think a lot of people, especially in this market, are so scared. I don't want to say the word scared, but are worried that if they do speak up, does that mean that they're going to get laid off? Does that mean they're going to be like, well, we only have a manager position at the moment. We don't need a technical person. So kind of have a good day. And to see a company such as Pfizer do that is absolutely incredible. And I'm so glad that you had that conversation.
Pfizer prides itself on career advancement and giving the colleagues what they need to support their development. So whether it is in a linear track, or I know we may hit on this later, what they call the diagonal track. Mm-hmm. So, right now I'm in clinical data coding, but say I wanted to go to the safety side and maybe do safety registrations in Argus, or man, I really want to try something out on oncology quality and go to the quality side as a QA auditor. If the opportunity exists where there's a business need, our company allows for it. So whether it's through secondment, mentorship, there's a bunch of various vehicles of processes to get you from point A to point B. So whether you go linear, whether you don't want to hop in the car at all on that journey, or whether you want to go on the journey and you want to jump over the canyon diagonally, it's entirely up to you.
Yeah. Love that.
I mean, that's great, especially from a perspective of, retention, employee retention, when you're giving a candidate employee this many opportunities to grow within the company. I think, I think it's just a win-win for both parties involved. Yeah. Would love to get from your perspective, Hank, what are the biggest trends right now in clinical data, medical coding that are shaping the industry?
I would be remiss if I didn't say AI. AI is the top trend. There's some industry ignorance around AI, and AI, when properly utilized, can be a miracle worker. It can assist us in maintaining or enhancing efficiencies, assisting with our roles. In our roles as clinical medical coders, our job is to help teams get the data coded up and analyzed so we can get products to patients who need them quickly. So, time is precious. So AI helps speed up that time scale. People are concerned, though, that am I going to lose my job? Okay, that's a valid concern. The problem is AI in most industries right now is not at the point where it's humanoid level, where there's no human interaction being needed. We still need human beings, even with AI. So we could go 100% AI, and that's what I'm pushing for at my company. I want AI in the medical coding space 100%. People are like, yeah, but aren't you going to push yourself out of a job? No, because while AI will help us, it is not the sigma cum laude valedictorian in the class. It's probably a B plus student, and it's still learning. So you still need the teacher there, which is us. You still need the human being interacting and sort of validating the processes. I think AI is huge. Don't be concerned about your jobs, people.
I think with AI, it's so new that people just don't know where it's going to fit in. Like they just don't know what's going to happen with it. Is it actually going to take over jobs? Is it going to be just an extra thing that people are going to have at work that's going to help them with their job? So I think with anything that's so new, people are always concerned. Like, how does that affect me personally, and how does it affect my job?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Hank, I think the way your perspective, what you just said, is so important for candidates to kind of really embrace that AI. It's not here to take your job, but it's actually to streamline, the processes and to maybe take over some of those more redundant tasks. So it's supposed to be something good. It's supposed to be positive. It's going to help you out, supposed to make your life, easier from the day-to-day perspective. So I'm excited. I'm all for AI. What qualities and skills do you look for when hiring a clinical data medical coding?
That is a great question, because people always think that they need to have a medical degree. And at least here in the US, when people go through the medical degree program, they get their MD, DO, whatever it is, the way that learning semantic rolls out is that they expect physicians to think outside of the box. Here's all the facts that we're throwing at you regarding patient X. What's the diagnosis? Think outside the box. Start pulling things together. And medical coding is not like that. Medical coding is, there's the data. Don't think outside the box. The box is made of steel walls. You are not allowed to think outside the box. You have data X in front of you. You don't know what the patient's taking medications wise. You don't know what their other concomitant or comorbidity history is. All you know is X. So take X, a medical condition, a drug, analyze it. What is it? And then find the best code. So the physicians, or people that train to be physicians, at least here in the US, I'm sure it might be the same abroad, they have a tendency to not work with blinders. They have a tendency to, I'm going to think, because that's how they're trained through their education. And that's not necessarily a good characteristic in medical coding. It's great for doing data review. Say you're looking at the data of a trial overall and you're like, that doesn't make sense. Yeah. And I'm thinking outside the box. It doesn't make sense because I can see other things. But when you're when you're doing medical coding, you're often like a troll under the bridge analogy. You are not allowed out under that bridge. You only hear the car, you see the tires coming above you, and that's it. So, good medical coders know and recognize those constraints. They work within the rules that the MEDRA MSSO and the Uppsala Monitoring Center have for coding MEDRA and WHO drug. And of course, the company conventions, if there are some. They also have some level of medical knowledge. So I don't want to say that that having medical knowledge is bad. Having medical knowledge is very important, or at least medical or clinical knowledge of how a disease manifests itself coming into the clinic. If you have someone who is a art history major, and I hate to pick on art history, but that's what's in my mind right now, and they don't have a strong science background, and you're working in clinical trial medical coding, they may be at a slight disadvantage. I'm not saying they will be at a disadvantage. They may be at a slight disadvantage because the requirement is to take a look at the data and think in a scientific way what that data is, and the ability to take data, deconstruct it quickly, and then reconstruct it on the back end into the various concepts, and then assign a term or a code to it. So, what I'm looking for in candidates is the ability to problem solve quickly. Because, like I mentioned, time is of the essence.
From your perspective, Hank, what are the biggest trends in clinical data, medical coding that are shaping the industry right now?
So, a lot of companies now are going through some budget constraints. So, AI is being pushed in order to gain efficiencies. We're also seeing across the industry, I've seen it on LinkedIn mentioned a few times, where companies, they're going through tighter budgets. As you know, with clinical trials, approximately 90% of the products never make it to market. So the whole idea is, can you recognize what's not going to make it to market? Fail quickly. So if you're going to fail, don't fail slowly, fail quickly, because then we know that we can dump what's going on and reallocate resources to what's working or what we think is going to work. So the clinical trial landscape is a bit of a dance, and you never know whether it's going to be a paso doble, whether you're going to be waltzing or what it is, but you're going to be dancing. So when you come in, what is it going to be? You're working on a study one day, and then maybe a year later, you've done a futility analysis down the road, and you're like, "Ooh, yeah, this doesn't look good." And the leadership says, "Yeah, we're going to reassess the parameters of what we have in the pipeline." And of course, then they downsize the program. They reappropriate resources to other programs, start up new programs. So that's but with the tighter budgets that we're seeing, I think what we're going to see, that dancing piece has always been there. But what you're going to see is you're going to see fewer studies, better recognition of what works, quicker to fail rate. These companies understand that they got to fail faster. They got to identify what's failing, so they're not wasting time. They're not hemorrhaging money. They can reappropriate money, reappropriate resources. And of course, like I mentioned, what our goal is, get safe and effective therapies to patients who need them quickly.
How do you think you recognize that part of failing faster? Does that mean was it a training thing? Is it like, what do you think happens in businesses for them to be able to do that?
That's another great question, and something that's probably above my pay grade to assess. And when I'm at these study meetings and I'm hearing, a little bit of what's going on, and I hear the updates and, oh yeah, this isn't doing so well, we're going to reassess go, no go. Go, no go is more often than not in your early phase. That doesn't mean that late phase molecules can't have a go, no go. You usually see a go, no go on the early phase. With the late phase, what you'll see is something that has been on the market, and oh God, we're getting more long-term data. Ooh, this long-term data, there's something popping up in the safety profile. Oh, this efficacy isn't what we once expected. And of course, then they have to modify the drug, the safety, periodic safety updates or the drug safety updates to the various regulators. And then a decision is made, oh yeah, this program has made it to XFAR. And yeah, we got to make the decision of no go and pull it back.
How has the work environment evolved at Pfizer in the past few years, particularly the rise of remote and hybrid roles?
Yeah, I think the remote role really went big at start of COVID. Yeah, I remember in my CRO days, we had an office in the northern Chicago suburbs, and that was just when companies were in the early to mid 90s starting to say, oh, we can do data management remote. Why don't we let people take a day or two? And back then it was, hey, you want to do Friday at home? Go ahead. Yeah. And we did it. And then people realized, oh, we're actually able to be productive, not in the physical building headquarters.
I think the hybrid, remote, on-site, I think it's a debate going on LinkedIn. I see it pretty much every day. Someone wants to work remote. I think it just depends on the person as well. Some people work really well remotely. Some people work really well on site. Some people love the hybrid, who have families and stuff like that. But it is a very interesting subject because I think I see a post about it pretty much every day on LinkedIn, to be honest.
Yeah, and Claude, you're right. The problem with the remote comes down to management and leadership.
Yeah.
Management and leadership have to trust their colleagues. So can you trust them to do the work? I hope so. You hired them.
Yeah.
So can you trust them to do the work? Whether there's hopefully now, I don't want to say sitting at a cafe. Some people shouldn't be sitting at cafes because they're doing stuff that's proprietary and their screen may be visible. But wherever you're sitting, can you do the work on the time SLA that is expected? So whatever your expected timelines are, can you do the work? If yes, then I don't care where you're sitting.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's on the individual as well. Like, if you're doing your job at home and you're, doing what you need to do, then I think that's what it comes down to, really.
Yeah, and when I was in leadership, and people were like, "Oh, how do you how do you know your people are getting their work done?" I said, "It's called trust. I trust that they're getting their work done. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt." So if you have a colleague that is playing the system, they will get caught eventually. Most people do, because the productivity reports that are out there, the quality of the work is going to suffer. Other of their co-workers may report, "Hey, I noticed this person's not on when I need them," or the quality of work X has suffered from this person. And of course, that all filters down to management and leadership. So we don't need to actively micromanage people. That you should never micromanage people. It sets for a very toxic work environment. Trust.
Thank you so much for sharing your perspective. And then would love to get, if you could share any advice for someone that's just starting out in the life science sector or looking to get into clinical data, medical coding.
Sure. I would recommend get your feet wet in as many pools as possible. So some people are scared of recruiting firms. I can see their point. Some recruiters are not as good as other recruiters. But and what I mean by that is some recruiters don't take the time to listen to the candidate on what is important to the candidate. They're more concerned, and this is what I've noticed, and not just my experience, but working with recruiting firms. And that's not necessarily the case. There are plenty of great recruiters out there. So if you're scared of recruiters, don't be scared of recruiters. Find a great recruiting firm. We're talking to one right now. Find a great one and have faith, because their job is to listen to you as a candidate and to obviously listen to their customers on what the customers are looking for and find the best match. It's like a dating game for jobs.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly it.
Yeah, and then start, whether you start in the CRO space or whether you start in the sponsor space, it is different. And we may touch on this later, so I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but the experiences in the CRO sector is different, or usually is different, than what you're going to get in the sponsor sector. I would recommend, if you can, get experience in both.
Okay.
It's very unique. Get experience with as many therapeutic areas as you can. Get experience with as many systems as you can, EDC systems, coding systems. Very important to have a robust skill set and a diverse knowledge base.
Do you recommend someone should start in a CRO, or should they start in a sponsor, or it doesn't really matter?
I don't think it matters. When I started in the sponsor, I only got 2 therapeutic areas. So I got renal and I got oncology, and that was all I got. And I got about 10 studies I was responsible for. So not a ton, but it was enough because it was a large enough sponsor that it kept me busy. And then I realized when I went and it was only in one system. So oftentimes what you're going to see at sponsors is you're not going to see 2, 3, 4, 5 different systems. Sponsors are all in. You may see different systems depending on what the function is that your role you're participating in within the organization. From a coding space, an EDC platform space, you at a sponsor, you usually don't see more than one coding system and maybe one or two different. You could have multiple EDC systems feeding into a centralized coding system. At a sponsor, that's usually not the case. It's pretty streamlined, but at a CRO, they have many different sponsors and customers they work for. So the whole idea is if you want to get good business for a CRO, you have to have the diverse platform, the knowledge of your colleagues across those diverse platforms. Because if you go to a sponsor trying to gain business, and I had to deal with this at my prior company, trying to gain business for our CRO from a coding perspective, I would know who the sponsor was. I would know what their systems were, and I would then comb through our team of 18 people and say, do we have anybody who has this experience? Bingo, we do. Okay, I want that person as the primary lead on this project reporting in here. So the sponsor feels comfortable. So, that's the advantage of a CRO. The CRO, you're usually going to get multiple system experience, multiple, not always, but sometimes multiple therapeutic area experience and study phase experience, multiple sponsors. Now, the multiple sponsor experience could be a death wish for some, because the one good thing is at the sponsor, what I say goes. I'm the top dog at the sponsor. So if I want something done, it's going to get done because I make the rules. That's not the case at the CRO. At the CRO, you don't make the rules. You can suggest certain rules, but then the sponsor is the one that says, yeah, those are good, or no, we don't like your rules. We have our own rules, and we expect you to follow these rules. If you're at a CRO, are you only with that sponsor? So you're only expected to know and follow one set of rules, or are you a diverse resource who is being used across numerous sponsors? I can tell you at my prior CRO, two back, when I was doing clinical coding, I was being used across 5 different sponsors. And what that means then is having to understand the relationship and structure within each sponsor, what their respective rules and conventions are, and of course then following. For some people that could be a huge burden.
What are your thoughts on clinical data, medical coding roles being merged into clinical data manager roles?
I started seeing this, I should preface that I started as a senior clinical data manager / medical coder. So that's how I started. And I probably wasn't very good of a medical coder when I first started because I had 10,000 other things that I was working on. So as anyone knows with data management, a good data manager has their hands and feet in numerous pools all at once at the same time. So you're working on a data management plan. You're also doing edit checks. That's only on one study. You have another study. Oh, we're doing CRF design. I have study meetings for these. And, oh God, I got to do medical coding. When am I going to fit this in? That is the problem here, because medical coding is not just looking at data and assigning the medical codes. In its essence, that's what it is. Medical coding also means, what are you going to do every year when you have to up version the dictionaries to the newest version? What are you going to do answering questions that teams have about coded data? Or they have search strategies. So you have coded data that's being analyzed by medical people or biometrics, and they say, hey, we're looking for terms that are in peripheral neuropathy, and we were wondering if you could help us identify those terms. Okay, yeah, maybe in next week after I get through all my clinical data management tasks. So, people have the misconception that all clinical data coders do is code. And maybe at certain organizations that's true, but I can tell you from having built the business up at my prior CRO company, that's not necessarily true. Clinical data coders code, they review coding, they assist with questions regarding to the analysis of coding, they version dictionaries. So there's quite a few things that coders can do that will keep them busy all year long. So having the merging of the roles, some companies do this because maybe they're trying to save on costs and thinking a 2-for-1 makes sense. What I have seen in my 20 plus years of experience in the medical coding and data management plus space is that doesn't work. The quality will suffer. 99% of the time, the quality will suffer on either the data management end, on task X, whatever it is, because they're devoting themselves more towards the coding end, or it's going to suffer on the coding end because they're not taking time to understand the data, deconstruct it, reconstruct it, find the best term, understand the conventions, do the coding work because they're doing data management tasks A through J. So I am not a fan of that merging of the roles. I know companies do it. I would advise not to do it. I think the outcomes, the chances of successful outcomes for that colleague being a dual hybrid role is minimal.
That's a trend that we've been noticing in the past, year. We've been seeing roles being merged, like you said, a 2-for-1, and clinical data management and medical coding has been one that we have seen recently. A lot of companies, they're getting rid of, unfortunately, their medical coders and they're putting onto that data managers. But you specified exactly why long term, or even in the short term, that wouldn't make sense. So hopefully, a lot of companies will be on board with that and don't get rid of that role completely and put it on. I mean, from the data managers that I work with, they are, especially on the CRO, they are already overworked. They have a lot on their plate, and to add in a whole another, role, as you mentioned, this could, there's a lot of things that a medical coder could do. I think, long term is not a solution for a candidate to be, happy in the role. How do you see the future of clinical data, medical coding in the next 5 to 10 years?
So I definitely see the increase in AI. I think I had mentioned that the number of studies that people may be working on may decrease depending on the organization's long-term strategy. Fewer studies, more targeted, quicker, versus, oh God, let's cast that wide net. Yeah, that costs too much money. Start reeling in cost. One thing here in the U.S. is we already have a conflagration of healthcare costs. We have a hard time reeling in healthcare costs for patients. And one of the reasons is some of these prices of these products from said companies are way too expensive. Well, you know how you fix that? You decrease the cost of clinical trials. And how you do that is you get more focus, you get more experienced, more efficient with stuff, bringing in AI, getting better systems. Here at Pfizer, we're in a system right now that's 30 plus years old. And they realized, as we're trying to scale, that's not going to work. Yeah, good. Identified that. Now let's get into a new system that is 21st century with all the AI enablement, where you can take the current workload, be more efficient with the same resourcing. Maybe you adjust the resourcing, maybe you don't. Maybe you keep the same resourcing, and it allows you to scale the business more.
It goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? AI and using it to our advantage. And when people really understand what it is and know how to navigate it within this space, I think ultimately it will make everyone's life a lot easier. Hopefully make those clinical trials a little bit more affordable, and in turn just better overall. So that's great to see that's on the horizon from your perspective for a medical coding.
Perfect. And then I think probably one of the biggest things that has been happening in the life sciences biotech industry is mergers and acquisitions from both CROs and pharmaceutical companies. And every time I speak to a candidate in the biometrics market who knows that the company is going through a merger and acquisition, they're scared, they're worried. What is going to happen to my role? How do I adapt? I know you've been through a couple of mergers and acquisitions, both from a CRO perspective and a pharma perspective. How do you adapt, Hank? How is it that you think, okay, this is happening, this is what I need to do? Is there anything that you think of, or is it just happens and you try to kind of go with it?
I was in leadership at my prior company, and I didn't even know some of the details that was going on regarding some of the mergers. So it's who's going to know what at what time, and sometimes you may not know. So It's the unknown that scares people. but all you do is control what you can control. What you can control as a colleague is be at your best every single day. Bring your A game every single day. You're going to have off days. Everybody has off days.
Mm.
But try and bring your A game every day. Be an A player, and hopefully leadership sees that. They do. Leadership definitely knows who the players are who are helping the organization and who are not helping the organization. That piece, you can control being the best that you can be, is be the best you can be day in and day out, working towards a common goal, making sure that people see that you're doing this. So you have that exposure through networking internally. I highly recommend LinkedIn. Keep up on LinkedIn, network, have that market presence, because you never know. Like I said, that shark is coming up as you're paddling in that hurricane. And what that shark is senior leadership saying, hey, you have a team of 10 people. Oh, we're merging with a team that has 5 people. We don't need 15 people. Ooh, we got to downgrade half. So, yeah, we got to get rid of 8 people. And, how is that done? Is it done by who's making the most money? Is it done by tenure? Hopefully not, because that's age discrimination. But you cannot control the thinking that goes into those resource adjustment conversations. And you definitely can't control the outcome of these resource adjustment conversations. So you could be A player. You could not be 40 years of experience nearing retirement. You could not be making high or mid to 6 figures. So you could be not in that upper bound of salary that they're looking to skim off the top. And you could still be downsized. So, there's really not much you can do other than what you can control. So what I say is put in your A game, do your work every day, keep networked. And if something happens, it's going to happen. That you can't control it. All you can control is your response to it. Okay. And if you got downsized, what you do is, okay, this is unfortunate. I thank you and the leadership for all the experience and time that you've given me at this organization. And then you pick up and you redivert your time elsewhere. And because if you're well networked, that's what I said, well networked, you're not going to be without a job. So if you're well networked and an A player, and of course you have some good recruiters in your back pocket, it's not going to be long that you sit on the bench waiting.
Great point. I think, the point to talk about that you brought up in terms of controlling what you can, right? Mergers and acquisition, it is very uncertain, even up to senior leadership, right? They may not have all the details, may not know when and who this potentially is affecting, but what these potential candidates can control is networking, right? So you might have a recruiter that's reaching out to you for an opportunity, may not be the right role, may not be the right time, but a simple response of, hey, not right now, will definitely keep you on a recruiter's radar. We do remember that. We're like, okay, so-and-so responded, wasn't interested, let me keep them on the radar. Or even better yet, have that conversation. You may not actively be looking, but if you can have that relationship with a recruiter, explain your background, your skill set, they could always keep an eye open for opportunities. So in a situation, potential layoffs, you know who to go to. They already know your background. They can quickly line you up. And as you mentioned, potentially, won't be waiting long for a new opportunity.
A mistake that I see often in the industry is people not being business appropriate in their relationships. So business is all about, just like life, creating relationships, nurturing those relationships, maintaining them, creating new relationships. So your recruiters are part of that relationship. So when you are on LinkedIn and you get as you may, if you are an A player, you're probably getting a lot of LinkedIn traffic from various recruiters. Don't delete their message without responding. I've seen that way too many times. Oh, I'm not, it's not necessary to respond to them. I'm not ready yet. It's not for me. That's irrelevant. The proper thing to do is to respond back to them with a short blurb saying, thank you for for considering my qualifications for this role and opportunity. I am currently very happy in my current role, or I'm not looking at this time. Thank you very much. Those 2 or 3 sentences say a great deal, as you said, Caroline, about that person and their character.
It's basically networking. You just want to network with as many people as possible. And I know people see recruiters as like, oh, I'll only talk to them when, I need a job or whatever the case may be. But networking, you can network with recruiters when you're looking, when you're not looking, and just build that relationship for when the time does come. You know who to reach out to. And then in terms of going, and again, a big topic, going from CRO to pharma, how do you position yourself to make the move? And what challenges have you faced, going from a CRO to a pharma?
So that's a question that's a little challenging to answer because it depends on the CRO and it depends on the sponsor company. So if you're going to a sponsor company that has one product or one therapeutic area, and you're coming from a CRO that specializes in one therapeutic area, it may be a little bit easier of a challenge. But if you're coming from a CRO that specializes in numerous therapeutic areas and you're going to a sponsor that specializes in numerous therapeutic areas, that could also be pretty easy. But if you're going from a CRO that's, single therapeutic area specialty and you're going to a sponsor that's numerous therapeutic area specialties. So say you're at a CRO that specializes in ophthalmology and you go to a large pharma that has not just ophthalmology, but cardiovascular, oncology, infectious disease, everything. And you come in to a centralized role where you're going to be responsible for everything, that it's going to depend on that person's medical savvy. How, do they already know all this stuff? Are they going to have to learn about these therapeutic areas and get, knowledge up, as they say in the industry? How many systems are they going to have to relearn? So, the benefit of coming from the CRO to the sponsor, more often than not, is the CRO, you're getting more systems experience, more diverse systems experience. So in my case, we were in 4 different systems at my CRO. So when I came over to the sponsor side, I'm like, oh, okay, you use system X? I've been using that system all the time I was at the CRO. So it's a comfort factor. Versus now, if you were at a sponsor and you are using system X and you decide to go to the CRO side, and now are you going from multiple therapeutic areas to a single therapeutic area, multiple to multiple? Are you going from a single system to multiple systems? Do you have any experience in those multiple systems, or is the learning curve going to be one that you're going to be having to learn? So there's a lot that goes into it. It's not a cut and dry answer, unfortunately.
For example, let's say that and I know you're not managing at the moment, but let's say you were hiring currently for a big company such as Pfizer, and someone who's working in a CRO and wanted to dive into a Pfizer. If you got their resume and let's say they're working in a smaller CRO, one therapeutic area, what would you be looking for in that resume that you're like, okay, I don't know if they would be the perfect fit, but I'd love to talk to them just to find out a little bit more? What would you be looking for in that resume?
Great question. So if they came from so we'll use the ophthalmology CRO example, and they came and, we are a centralized team here. So they're going to be responsible not just for eye, but every possible therapeutic area. What I'm going to look at then is what do they have from a medical expertise background? Are they medically savvy, clinically savvy, which means that I would expect, as with most people that are medically and clinically savvy, the learning curve is quick. They can step out of the ophthalmology with blinders into the bigger clinical space of all these therapeutic areas and be like a kid in a candy store. Oh my God, I'm getting to code different data, not just eye disorders stuff. I get to see all this stuff and it's going to be great. So that's one thing I'm looking for. Then I'm also looking for systems experience, technical expertise. Mm-hmm. Now, if they were in system Y and we don't use system Y, Okay, how good are you in System Y? If you're good in System Y, and I know System Y, and I know all the high level technical expertise and things that you can do in System Y, and I see it listed on your CV, you have exactly what I'm looking for. So even though you haven't used System X, I think you have the ability to translate technical expertise and concepts from System Y to System X. And I
Got
would
it.
take a gamble that they could do that.
As we wrap up here, would love to get your perspective on what are some common mistakes or missteps that you've seen candidates make in the interviews?
So I think I touched on one of them earlier. So if you're going through a interview with a recruiter, please take time to acknowledge the recruiter and the time. Also, when you go in for a interview, or even if you don't go in for, you have an interview, please get the contact information, whether it's a name and email. That would be preferable. So name, email of individuals that you meet with, and if you can't get everybody's, at least get somebody's who can act as the point person for the interview party. And within 24 hours, send an email. The days of sending official letters is so 20th century. We are in the digital, in the good old days, you would actually physically write a letter and
Yeah.
send it to someone, and it would show that you cared. Now you are in the digital technology. Please don't text, but at least send an email to them that is with effective college level prose, meaning not just Twitter language in the email. I want to see real emotion in a reply, and thanking them for their time. And also, now don't just thank them for their time. Restate why for role X. You are the best candidate. So I'd like to thank you for my time. It was a pleasure chatting with you about this role X. I also wanted to reiterate why I think I am the best candidate for this role. Boom, 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 boom. And that should be the last thing in that letter, because that's the last thing that sits in their mind about you as a candidate.
Do you see anything in medical coding when you used to interview candidates that you think, oh, they should have prepped a little bit more on this, or maybe they should have prepped a little bit more on that? What do you think the prep would be if someone was going in for a medical coding interview?
So I've during a few interviews, I've asked more technical based expertise. So normally the interview processes that I've been on, HR or the talent acquisition people ask the non-technical questions. And by the time that person gets past the talent acquisition person and they get to me, they've been through the ringer once. I'm going to put them through the technical ringer, and that's my job. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask, are you available to work? No, I care about what are your systems experiences? What have you done? How have you tackled a challenge? So please describe a challenge you've had regarding a coding process. What was it? Tell me how you got through it. And what system was it? So I want them not to baloney through an answer. I see that more often than not, where people think they can chat GPT or baloney through an answer. And I'll tell you what, I've been around the block over 2 decades with lots of experience, and you can't get past me with a baloney type answer. I will catch you in the weeds and I'll have my weed whacker, so to speak. So I'll put you through the perils of not being prepared. So yeah, I don't want to scare away potential interview candidates. The whole idea is that I want people prepared and know that, hey, you're coming in for role X. What does role X do? Be prepared to speak to what role X does. Because I, as a hiring manager, and I'm sure other hiring managers are like this, we're going to quiz you upside down and inside out from the technical expertise as it relates to role X. So you better be prepared to answer those questions.
Yeah, we are huge on interview prep for our candidates. So, it's really important to be prepared for, interviews, for especially technical interviews. And, when we always say, when someone asks you a question, answer the question and then give an example of when you did such thing, because then you bring it all together and you can really showcase hey, I know what you're talking about, but I've also done this before. I think people And again, it's nerves, there's a lot of things going on. But I think sometimes people just answer the question. I'm like, no, give an example when you've done it. So give the example of when you did it. It just puts it all together and puts the ribbon on top.
And there have been some instances where I've interviewed candidates, and it's because of the organization that they were at and how that organization was structured, where their role was not as all inclusive as the similar role at other companies, other organizations. So what I mean by that is this coder only coded Medra. They never touched Who Drug in their life, so they weren't familiar with Who Drug. But the good news is I was able to identify that during the interview process. Mm-hmm. And you know what? They were perfect on the other end. They didn't have the Who Drug experience. Their technical expertise on everything else was fine. That's not necessarily a detriment.
Yeah.
I want people to understand that just because you are not, or you're what you perceive that you are not the best rounded candidate doesn't mean anything. Speak to the strengths that you have. You all have strengths. Speak to those strengths as it relates to the role that you are applying for. And usually good things happen.
Couldn't agree more. Well, Hank, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you coming on Statistically Speaking. You're our second guest, so we're really excited. But thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see you soon.